Hello everyone and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Laura Rogers and this is my weekly show, Wednesdays at 11 Central. I usually have Joelle with me too here online, and she just had a baby, so she's out for a few months if you were wondering where she is. And today's topic at Power Hour is the concept of achieving a view, a list of items in SharePoint that are just tailored to the current user. If, say, the user is a manager and they want to see all of their subordinates items in a list, or if a user is like a project manager and they want to just only see their items in a list. So I'm going to go over several different concepts to understand with SharePoint and Power Apps and how you can achieve this. You can't really achieve that exact thing just only in SharePoint. It's better done in Power Apps, so I'll talk about that concept. So the fun thing about having this live show is that we have chat going on in Teams. So if you are new to Power Hour, wherever you're watching this video, there's a button to fill out a form down below that you can fill out to join for the first time, and then I send you an invite to be able to go into the team. So hello everyone that's chatting in Teams, and you can go into Teams. Go ahead. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and share my desktop. So here is Teams, and you go to the Power Hour channel that you're invited to, and then the general channel. And then you go over to today's date and then chat and pop out the little conversation over on the right, and that's where we're chatting. So a little bit more about today's topic. So I have kind of outlined it for you to kind of keep it organized so you'll understand the steps that I'm going through, because I'm going to lead up to the more complex Power App step. So first of all, I'm going to talk about some just SharePoint list permissions that exist to achieve this concept of a person only seeing the items in the list that apply to them. Then I'm going to talk about just filtering lists in SharePoint by me so that they just see items in a view pertaining to the logged in person. Then I'm going to show how to achieve that same concept in Power Apps in a gallery. And then I'm going to show the concept in Power Apps that's more complex. It has to do with a manager seeing all the items for their subordinates in a list in a gallery, a SharePoint list in a gallery in Power Apps. So let's go ahead, and I'll go ahead and share my screen now. All right. I'll get Teams out of the way. And you all, the fun thing about having this in Teams is that we're chatting the whole time and we're asking questions, and it's a lot of fun because you never know what's going to happen. So come jump in and say hi in Teams. Okay, so I've got a SharePoint list called projects, and I'm going to show a couple of concepts in here. I have a project manager column that we'll use where I'll show you, maybe you want people to just see, if they're project managers, just see their own projects in here. So now the first thing that someone suggested when they suggested this topic was that it's permissions. So people only have permissions to the items that say that you're the project manager on. Well, there isn't really a way to do it via permissions. You could get into that whole item level permissions via a workflow or a flow thing, but that is usually just a really bad idea. So I'm not even going to delve into the concept of item level permissions, because there are all kinds of issues, especially when you get into having hundreds of thousands of people and items, and it's just usually a bad idea all around. So none of the concepts I'm going to talk about today are going to talk about actually changing the permissions on items, on individual items one at a time. So I want to show you this setting though. So here is my SharePoint list, and we have a built-in setting in every list, not in libraries, just lists. And it's under advanced settings, and it is called this item level permissions thing. So let me see if I can zoom in a little bit in here. just a little. Okay. See item level permissions right here. This has been around for years, again, only for lists, but this lets you specify if you want people only to be able to see items that they created, that is the logged in user and they actually created those items. And then whether if you want people, the logged in user, to only be able to edit items that they created. And if you don't want people to be able to see or edit anything in the list at all, you can change it to none, and you can change it so that they can only just read things that they created, but they still can create them. But by default, it's just read all items, create all items. The problem with this setting is that it's really cool for just the logged in user, but it doesn't apply to any other field besides created by. So the logged in user has to be the one that created those items. It's only going to apply the items they created, not items where, say, they're the project manager in the project manager field, but somebody else created it. So there's only a small, like, finite number of situations where this could apply. Now, you can give, so people who would have full control permissions of that list can see everything in the list, and there's a little more fine-grained permission that I talk about in my SharePoint class, but basically you can say, okay, these people can see the entire list and everyone else can only see their own items. But that you can't get any more granular. You can't say just a specific column or something. So the way that you can do it now, again, this one, that was permissions. That's actually permissions. You cannot access any of those other items no matter what. You can't see them in a view. You do not have permission to those other items, which is what kind of makes that setting cool. Now, this other concept is going to be a view. So you can, and this has been around forever in SharePoint too, you can create a view that is filtered by and then use some people column and look at the currently logged in user and say the currently logged in user is in that people column. So for example, if I wanted to say I want just a list of projects where I'm the project manager, I don't have a view yet that's just my projects. So I'll go create a new view the new way. So I'll just call it my projects and show it as a list. I'll make it a public view. And what I'm going to do is this additional step of doing this filter setting. So the only way to do this specific setting is in the classic way. So now I click the name of my column and go to edit current view, and now I'm in this classic old school way of editing a view settings. I go to filter, and this is where I've got my project manager column, and that is a people column, and I can say is equal to me. And so me, see right over here, it describes it. It even says today and me are the only ones that exist like this. So project manager is a people field. That other one, the today one, that has to be used on a date field. But project manager is a people field, so I can say project manager is equal to me. So therefore, I'll click OK. So then now you have project manager is equal to me. So these are just my projects. So I'm not even showing, let's see, where's the project manager column? There it is. So these are just my projects. So anyone else who was looking at this my projects view would only see their projects. So that's kind of nice, because what you could do is you could make my projects, you could make it the default view. So you can make it so as soon as people arrive on that list, they're automatically just seeing their projects. And that concept can be done for any people fields. So the created by field is also just another people field. So if it says person or group here, those are the ones that you can do that on. So like created by is a person. In this case, project owner is a person, project manager is a person. So you could say, you could create multiple views. You could put them all in one view. So my projects, I could also say, not only is project manager equal to me, I can say, or project owners is equal to me. And then that way I'll be able to see any projects where I'm the project manager or the project owner just in this one view. So one thing you could do is you could put this view as the default, and you could just give them no other views. You could just take away the all items view. You could take away their ability to create views, and then you could just give them this one view. The thing about that is it's not permissions. They still technically have access to all the other items in the list. You just haven't provided them a way to get to that list of items. So a couple of things, a couple of the concepts that I'm talking about with this concept are in the blog post that I just posted in the general channel under posts. I put here a couple of resources for today's topic. And it's a blog post I wrote probably a year or two ago called Power Apps as a Front End. And the same concept applies to where it's talking about using Power Apps as a front end and just not letting them get to the SharePoint data, and some things that you can do, like take away people's ability to create views so they can't create like other views of this list and be able to see all the items. So those are ways that you can sort of lock down something in SharePoint that's not permissions. So that was the first. So the first thing I covered was that SharePoint list setting for item permissions. That's in the advanced setting. Then I talked about SharePoint list filtering by me with any person field. Now let's go to the Power Apps stuff. We'll talk about the Power Apps filter by current user and filtering subordinates of the current user. Now, I did write a blog post. I also put that in the resources in that in Teams. And my blog post is called Power Apps Filter by Me. And it shows you how to do that concept. So let me go ahead and go back to my screen sharing. Okay. So now let's go to, so this project list, I've got it in a Power App. And you've probably seen this Power App in a few different other demos that I do. I use this one a lot because projects in SharePoint are a common type of list that people do and create apps for. And let's see. I was trying to look at the notes here. Yeah, that new create new view is pretty quirky. Yeah, and Jur says you can use SharePoint groups with a little additional work. Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that is possible. I'm not sure. I'm not going to click on the link right now, but Jur, there is a way to tap into SharePoint services and to be able to get SharePoint group information too, but I'm trying to stick to the more sort of less sort of hack and code and things like that, like the item level permissions and like the thing with the SharePoint groups. But definitely, you all check out the link that Jur posted here about Reza's approach, because that's a common thing that a lot of people like to do. So maybe if I have time at the end, we'll go dive into that and kind of see the difference. This is a thing that I've blogged about many times, and like many people have blogged about and created videos for, because there are just so many different approaches, but not really one good approach. So there's all kinds of different ways that people have come up with to achieve this concept. All right, so here in my Power App, I've got this list of projects, and this is the same list I was just looking at in SharePoint, just as that list called projects over here. So this is the exact same data. So I am looking at a list of projects. Now this whole filtered thing was in a different Power. If you want to learn how to do that, that's in a different Power Hour that I did about filtering the columns at the top of a gallery in Power Apps. But let's go ahead and talk about that concept of my items in here. So I have, what I'm doing here is I'll go ahead and I'm going to start it over so I can show you what the data looks like, and then just do this syntax from scratch so you can kind of see me typing it out so it doesn't look as complicated. All right, so this items property right here for the gallery, so the gallery selected, I have the items property, and it is just projects. Now it also helps in this part where I'm doing the more advanced Power Apps stuff, if you've taken my advanced Power Apps class. It's about 12 hours long, but it helps if you have all that under your belt, if you know all these concepts of collections and galleries and filtering and functions and just how all this works. All right, because in Power Hour, a lot of times I just dive straight into the stuff and don't necessarily go into the intimate details of explaining what functions are. All right, so I'm going to filter this list of items. So I can just put a filter function at the very beginning of whatever my data source is. And as I'm typing the filter function, it shows me the syntax right above what I'm typing. So I want to filter my list of projects where the project manager, and I can just pick the project manager from this list down here too, or I could type it. I think I might have already passed it. Project manager, there it is. Filter it where the project manager, now the project manager is a people field. So since those are complex fields, I need to say what specifically about the project manager. Do I want their email name or photo? So I want to filter it where the project manager's email address is equal to my email address, the logged in user. Well, how am I going to know the logged in user's email address? Now there is a function called user, equals user. And that just gives you the logged in user, their information, like their email address. So this would work. I could filter it by the logged in user's email address, but notice it's giving me these delegation errors. It's not really errors, just suggestions. So I usually don't directly use that user little function just throughout the Power Apps. What I usually do is I declare a variable at the very beginning. So I'm just going to jump back out of what I was in the middle of writing and show you where that is. I do this right here. Set, and I just call my variable var current user. It's this thing right here. I set my var current user to this user function. All right, so then that way I just have that information. I'm just using it because I might need it in multiple places in my Power App. Oh, thanks, Jer, for the link to the information about it being delegable. All right, so now I've got it in a variable. So that way, right when the app loads, I've got who I am in a variable and I can refer to it in multiple places. So if I go to my list of variables, here is what it looks like, var current user. It is my email address, full name, and image. So that is going to be what I'm going to use when I want to filter that gallery by me. So I'll go var current user dot email. The dot email is because the var current user has 3 fields in it, right? So I need to get that one specific field. So it's the project manager dot email is equal to the var current user dot email. And so now I can see just all the ones where I'm the project manager. And you could also say like created by email, and I could say, be able to have, various different, any kind of people field that I want to compare to the currently logged in user, I can do that. So that is how to filter, just if you have, yes, for performance reasons. Because it's just faster when you're getting that information about the logged in user. If you've already collected it just at the very beginning of when the app loads, that way you just have less calls to make back to the server to go get that information. So yeah, just any kind of data like that that you might need to use multiple times, it's more efficient to keep it in a variable like that. So I pretty much use the var current user in every single app that I create because you're always going to need information like that. Usually most apps are going to need something having to do with the current user and filtering. So that's the concept of just having the person information in the column. And the other thing is that this person information has to be in a column. So if you are the person's manager, and say I'm just the person's manager, and I'm a manager in a department, and all my people are working on projects, and I just want to be able to see what projects they're working on. Well, with this method, that person's manager would have to be stored in another column. It would have to be a person field, and it would have to capture the logged in user's manager, and it would have to be stored in that list item. And then if the user's manager changed, then it might, that data might need to change. So I'll show you this other method of being able to go look at who the subordinates are of someone and going to get all those items if your name isn't already in a manager field. Because that, I mean, having the manager field captured ahead of time is, you know, is definitely something that you would have to think of when you're creating your list before you start populating data in it. So you've got everyone's managers in there. But then also if people's managers changed, then the list items might be incorrect because their manager would change. All right. Okay, so now let's go into the more complicated way of getting that information. Now there is a connector called Office 365 Users, and Office 365 Users is where we're going to get that information. So this is going to be based off of that manager column in Active Directory. So your manager in Active Directory, hopefully your Active Directory is accurate, right? Everybody's is very accurate. It's all up to date. So this next method is going to assume that your Active Directory is up to date. So we'll go ahead and look at the manager coming from your directory using Office 365 Users. So what we're going to do is when the person is looking at this list, it's going to go collect, right when the app opens, it's going to collect a list of who their subordinates are. And then it's going to go out and get all the items in this list that belong to their subordinates. Okay, so that's going to be another thing that I'm going to do when I first start the app. So it's going to be, let me narrow this down so I'm not, okay. I don't want to make it confusing by showing other unrelated stuff in here. Okay, this is the function that I'm going to use. I'm going to show you how I got this first though. It's a clear collect. I'm collecting a list of subordinates, and I've got this whole big Office 365 users, direct reports, blah, blah, blah thing. Now, when you're using a data source that you're not familiar with, that you're not sure what the structure is, a good way to kind of poke around in there and see what it does and what it looks like is to just create a blank screen and just stick a gallery on it. And I'll just put a blank vertical gallery, and then try typing in the items property and kind of see what the data ends up looking like. AD, what's that? Oh my goodness. That is your directory of people in your Microsoft 365. Just if you're not an admin, then you have no control over your directory of people, but someone somewhere in your organization is putting the directory in Office 365, putting the people in there and filling in, you know, their data, like their phone number and their manager name. So it really helps if the manager name's accurate. So I've got direct reports here. So Office 365 users.direct reports, and that's what's going to give me the direct reports of somebody. It doesn't, by default, it's not just necessarily going to be the logged in user, but I have to tell it who, direct reports of who. So this is a good spot where I can use the vericurrentuser.email. And now this is going to give me the direct reports of vericurrentuser.email. Let me go ahead and choose a little layout for this thing. But this is a little weird. The data looks a little weird. You could also collect this thing right here into a collection to kind of see what it looks like. because when I collected it, I found that it had like a sort of another table in it that I had to use instead. Let me see. Let me go grab that. It was direct reports dot let me see. Back over here to my on start. My on start is where I am, where I'm looking at this stuff, by the way. Yeah. Direct report. Oh, direct reports version 2. So that's what I did wrong over on this other screen, is I just typed direct reports instead of direct reports version 2. That's why the the syntax looked a little different. It's like, wait a minute, this is not what it was doing before. Honestly, I have no idea what the difference is between version 1 and version 2 of this little syntax in this Office 365 users connector. I would assume that version 2 would be a better one to use, but if you use version 2, apparently you have to put this dot value thing at the end of it. So then I've got, let's see, display name. So now what I've done here is I've got Office 365 users.direct reports version 2 and direct reports of who, and this is where you need to have the email address of who it's the direct reports of, and then dot value. It's like it has it all in this subtable. So before I put the dot value in there, it looks like it looks broken and it doesn't give me any data. So again, I did a collect of this. Actually, let me just do that real quick to show you more about how I got to that. So I'll just do collect. I'm just going to collect this data, because collecting things is also a good way to see what the data looks like. Oops, I got to say, what's my collection name? Okay, and then I'll just click this button. Okay, and then I've got this collection, collect cold test that I created. I'll go look at that real quick. And see, this is how I figured out that I needed a dot value, because once I click on the value, then there's all my information about my subordinates. So in here, that's how I knew to put this dot value at the end to be able to see the list of people. So I've got Laura Tester, Chris Rogers, Ali Bellu, Billy Bob. Those are all my fake subordinates in my little fake tenant. Okay, so then when the app is first running, I've got my on start here. That's when I'm doing that clear collect right here, collect the subordinates into this collection. So then I'm creating a collection called collect col subordinates. So then when I go to my collections, I can see those are my subordinates. Those are all people. That's all detailed information about people. I'm reading my the chat in here to make sure I can kind of catch up. They're talking about this whole long thread about whether anybody fills in their manager field in the directory. Yeah, I mean, you can tell them to do it, tell them why, and tell them it's very helpful in your business processes to do that. All right, so that's how to get the subordinates of the logged in user. So then what we're going to do is I'll have this list of people in this collection, and then I need to get all the items associated with each one of those people. So then I'm going to do a for all. So for all is a function in Power Apps where it will go through a list of something and do something. So for all the list of subordinates, I'm going to go collect all the projects that are associated with that subordinate. So, and I'm just going to create a button here just before I put it just in the on start is probably where you'd want to put it, but I'll just do, I'll delete this other button. I'll just do a button that collect subordinate projects. All right, and so on select, when I click this button, I'm going to say for all, and then for all of what? I've already got my collection of subordinates. So for all of the things in the collection of subordinates, what do I want to do? So notice it says for all, it says source, that's my source. And then the formula is just do something. So then I'm going to collect. Now I'm not going to do a clear collect, I'm going to collect, because a collect is going to keep adding on to the collection. So I'm going to say col subordinate projects, creating another collection. And I'm going to filter. I probably should split this out a little bit. Let me do this so that you can read it better. Collect. I'm doing Shift Enter in between these. Okay. I'm going to filter the projects list where the project manager, go back down here to project manager. Did I skip it? Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Project manager dot email is equal to the, now let's, what is the field called in that list of subordinates? I need to know what their field is called that has got their email address in it. And it might be email, it might be mail, it might have a capital M, a lowercase m, whatever. So I have to go figure out exactly what that field is called. And so I can go look at my collection, my col subordinates, and go find that field. So here it is. It is called mail. So now I need to go, now I know which field I need to look at. I need to go see if mail is equal to mail. Oh, they're asking about on-premises AD and Azure AD and custom attributes and, oh goodness. We'll do a solution. We'll probably have time at the end. We'll do a solution where maybe you have to create who the people's create a separate list of who the people's managers are, and you could do it that way instead, or have some manual list you're creating. All right, email equals mail, and it's lowercase m. It's this one. Close that. Filter projects where project manager dot email equals mail, and then I'm going to close that and close the for all. So it's for all the subordinates, go collect all of the projects where that subordinate is the project manager. So that is the formula. So you might want to take a screenshot or something. And so I'll go ahead and run that. So that's going to take a second. So notice that kind of the button pressed in, it took a second to go, depending on how big your list of projects is. And then I can go look at my collect subordinate projects. So now I've got all these projects, and it's going to be easier to just look. I want to double check the project manager in these, and when I'm viewing my collection in here, it only shows me 5 items anyway. So now I need to have a gallery that shows me that collection. So I'm just going to get rid of this little test gallery I did. I was just demonstrating what the data looks like of who the direct reports are, so that gallery doesn't matter. So I'll go insert another gallery, and I'll put this little template on it. And then for my items property, that's where I'm going to do that collection that I just created. And then let's see, what fields is it showing. So, you know, it always shows some weird fields by default. Project. Maybe I'll just do the title of the project here. Project name. Let's see what that project name is called. Yeah, project name. Project name. And then project manager, and instead of doing the dot email, I'll do dot display name so that it looks nice. And then you could do their picture in here. I'm going to save that though. I'm not going to do that right this minute. But the idea is that this gallery has been created, and it shows now all the projects having to do with my subordinates, which are Chris and Billy Bob are my subordinates. Apparently my other subordinates don't have any projects. So that's the solution in going to get all those based on who your subordinates are. So I can do the same thing with tasks. So I've got a list of tasks here. And that's a common thing, is to be able to have a task list and be able to see all of your subordinates' tasks that are assigned to them. So this is a big ugly task list that I have. I use that in a lot of demos too. And I have tasks assigned to people. So then a manager might want to see all the tasks that are maybe due, that are assigned to people that are under them. So I can do that same concept. So I've already in my OnStart, I've already got I'm collecting the subordinates, and that for all that I just created, that I put on a button, like that doesn't need to be, done with a button. That can also just be here in the OnStart. Just add that to the end. I usually just put things with a button to trigger them just when I'm first, testing it out. But you can also do run OnStart too to test things out. Okay, so this is the one that goes and gets the task list of tasks assigned to your subordinates. So the same thing, it's going to go through the list, that collection of subordinates, and then it's going to create a collection called Cole's subordinate tasks, where it's going to filter the task list down to the assigned to email equals the email address of that person. So then this collection of subordinate tasks is what I could potentially have displayed in a gallery. Another thing that I could do is maybe I only want to see the ones that are overdue. So let's see, let's look at my list of tasks. I've got a status, so I could say status is not equal to completed. So let's add that to the filter. So assigned to email equals mail, and status not equal to, it's status, it's going to be status dot, since it's a complex field, status dot value. Then this is going to give me a delegation warning, unfortunately. So just showing the items that are assigned to that person is not giving me a delegation warning, but only showing the completed ones is. So another way that you could achieve that without having to have the delegation issue is, let me go ahead and create another gallery. Well, actually I've got a screen of tasks. So I'm going to take this task list and just duplicate the whole screen, and that way I can just call this other screen my tasks, and this would just be a filtered my subordinates tasks, and then I could have it be only for the subordinates, SCR task list subordinates, and change all subordinate tasks. And then instead of this gallery showing the task list, this would be Cole subordinate tasks. So let's go make sure and run that. Oh yeah, let's see, Cole subordinate tasks. So, and I can, oh yeah, there they are. So now I can see all the tasks assigned to my subordinates, and then if I can put a filter just on this, in this gallery, filter this collection. So I can filter it further without having that delegation issue that I had, where status dot value is not equal to completed, like that. So you could also add something to where like the due date is in the past or something like that. So that's just narrowing it down even further. So now I've got just whoever I am as a logged in user, my subordinates tasks that are assigned to them. That's a great question, Lise. Lisa, I think it's Lise. Sorry. Okay, so one thing you could do, it depends on how people are using your app. So she asked if it's better to do the collections all in the on start, or wait till they go to each screen and do it in the on visible. If you notice, usually what I do is if I notice that the on start is making the app take a minute to load, and it's visibly, noticeably slow to the users because maybe there are so many tasks, then I would move that to the on visible property. Instead of having it in the on start, move it to the on visible of another screen. So maybe not everybody has subordinates or needs to see subordinate tasks, and they may or may not go to this screen. So what you could do is, for this screen task list subordinates, you could just have on the on visible, you could have it doing that for all here. So it's just going to wait until they go to this screen, and then it's going to do the for all. Another thing you can do is on visible, like if that collection of subordinate tasks is empty. So if is empty, then do the collection. Otherwise, if they've already been to that screen during this session and they've already collected it, it's not going to collect it again, because if they're like clicking back and forth between screens, you wouldn't want to keep collecting it over and over again. So yeah, you could look at it that way. And you could also put a little refresh button up here at the top right, and you can make the refresh button also go refresh the task list and recollect that, do the for all again, just in case maybe while the person's got the app open, people are completing their tasks and things. So they have the ability to manually refresh that. So it goes and gets the data and then collects it again. All right, so now we can look at, oh, okay, thanks. I pronounced your name right. Okay. Now, Rick said, can you make it an asynchronous action? I'm not sure what you mean. Is that different than what I just said about it happening when you're arriving on the screen, or when you're arriving on the app automatically? Oh, Larry says, I use a spinning circle and the wait message on start runs and make most screen features visible. Yeah, I usually just, anything that's making the on start slow, I just move it to you might just move it to the on visible of the first screen. Sometimes you do that and it helps. That way it's still kind of running behind the scenes when they first open the app, but it's not slowing down the whole just getting to that first screen. Let's see. Oh yeah, so that concept of on visible, so you could do if is empty, call subordinate tasks, then that whole for all thing. Let's see. Grab that. Then I'll go back to here. So if it's empty, if that collection is empty, now is blank is another function, but is blank is just for a single field. Is empty is like for a whole collection or a whole data source. So if it's empty, then it would go collect them all. So that is, see, I notice I put that in the on visible here. All right, so another concept that you could do is, and I think I've probably talked about this concept before in other power hours, of having the people or their roles defined just in a list in SharePoint, and then showing them certain information according to that role. So now the original question that was asked, I think we've tackled that. We've tackled just people seeing projects in a project list that are their projects, and people seeing, if they're a manager, seeing all their subordinates projects or their subordinates tasks. Now, something to consider with all this is that all this kind of me filtering it down to see certain information and people only seeing their projects and all this in Power Apps, refer back to that link that I posted about using Power Apps as a front end, because that none of this is permissions. So that only that very first setting that I showed you at the beginning of Power Hour with the permissions thing you can do based on the current user's created items, that is permissions. None of this other stuff is permissions. So, and when I talk about Power Apps as a front end, I talk about the concept of just, and this is what I do for most of my projects, is I just create the SharePoint list in a SharePoint site. Nobody is a member of the site. Nobody has access to the site. I only give them contribute permissions on those specific SharePoint lists that are part of the app. And then I create the Power App as its own standalone thing. And so anytime they're interacting with this list, in this case it's projects and tasks, they're only doing it in the Power App and they're never going to the SharePoint list. And that way you have fine control over what they can see and what they can't. And you're really just limiting them going to the raw data in SharePoint. But anyway, the article goes over all these things to consider and different things you can do. That's like security by obscurity. And I think I've even done a whole Power Hour about that concept. Let's see. All right, so now we have the concept of having like a separate list in SharePoint. If you don't have your manager list doesn't exist, your manager property in Active Directory has not been populated by your administrators, and so you can't rely on that built-in Office 365 users manager field, then there are other things that you can do. And if you have something else that's not manager, that's based on maybe I need to have like a field called representative or something, and I need to define that for different people. Or I have bosses and secretary. They're not called secretaries nowadays. They're administrative assistants. Or maybe I have a list of bosses and administrative assistants or something like that where you need to associate that. Then you can create a SharePoint list. So I have, I haven't created one yet for that concept. I'll go ahead and create one real quick. I'll just do a new list, and it's just a new blank list. And I just call this manual managers. Now this would be a pain because then you'd have to define each person and who their manager is. Or each person and what their role is. And you could do it role-based, but I think I've already talked about the role-based concept in other Power Hours. So this is used in a Power App. There. Okay, so I've got a title field that I'm not going to use. I'm just going to do a couple of person fields. So I'll call this employee and manager. So yeah, this would be a pain to have to keep this populated, but I guess if you have no IT control, this is your only option. The cool thing about this is that you could just have a central list. You could just have one SharePoint list, and you can just use it as a data source in a whole bunch of different Power Apps and just use it everywhere and just have them all point to this central list. You wouldn't have to have a separate list in every SharePoint site. So that's the nice thing about Power Apps is you can use any list, and any Power App can have lists from anywhere in it. Okay, so then I'm going to go into this list that I created. I'm going to make the title field so it's not required. I don't feel like dealing with that right now because this is just a little quickie thing. And just another little pet peeve of what I always do is I always turn off attachments when I create a list. All right, usually I don't need attachments. Okay, so now I've got my people, and I'll just say employee is Chris, manager is me, and then I'll just do one other one. That was Billy Bob was another one of the ones that has got tasks in there. All right, so you'd have to define who the employee and their manager are in this kind of list. So then in my In my Power App, I go add SharePoint. And I go add that. Let's see, what site is that? Home old Power Apps. And it is called Manual Managers. All right, I've added this list now to my Power App. So then I'm going to do something different in the OnStart. So what I had to do here was I had to collect a collection of subordinates from Office 365 users like this, but I'm just going to go down a little bit. Actually, I'm just going to create a button. So I'll just go to this new screen I created, and I'm just going to, instead of putting it in the OnStart, just for this little last demo, I'm just going to put it in a button. So I'll do collect. Actually, a clear collect, because in this case I need to get the list of who my subordinates are. So I've got manual oh yeah, Craig says they do that too. They have a plan list they use in multiple Power App builds that's housed in a private site. No, that's cool. All right. Okay, so I'm saying this is going to be the name of my collection, and I'm going to collect. What am I going to collect? It's going to be that manual managers list. I'm going to filter it where the manager is equal to, oops, manager dot, since it's a people field, manager dot email equals their current user dot email. Okay, I'll go ahead and click this button. Okay, then I'll go take a look at my collection. And now there are those two people. Now, I didn't put anybody else in that list. Let me just add another one just so you can see that there are 3 items and it's only going to collect 2. So I'll just say the employee is Alex and the manager is Joelle, just so that it has more items in it, so I'm not just collecting everything in the list, so that you can tell that it's collecting just specific things. So I'll go refresh my data source, and then I'll just click this button again just to prove that there were 3 items in the SharePoint list, and now my collection of subordinates is still only 2 items. It's only my 2 subordinates. So then you're going to do that same exact concept after you do that collect. Then you're going to go do a for all the items in this collection. Go get those people's tasks. So then the syntax is going to be the same. I just need to know what that email address looks like. And that is the employee, I think, employee.email. So I'm going to go get all the items in that list where the employee.email is equal to like all of the people that are my subordinates. So then you'll have that same concept. So I'll go ahead and add that for all in here, for all, and that's my collect subordinates manual. Then I'm going to, let me split this out a little bit. For all those, I'm going to collect and filter the task list where the assigned to dot email equals, and then that's going to be that employee, that's going to be that employee field dot email, and then a bunch of closed parentheses. And look at that one. That one's going to give me the delegation issue. This one's the one that I did off the top of my head, so I'm not sure if it's. I didn't do. This is the you know what I always do in power hours. At the very end, I just kind of make something up off the top of my head. This is the one that I didn't try ahead of time, so it's kind of wonky. So I collected all my subordinates. So for all those items, I'm going to filtered the task list where assigned to .email is equal to, and it should be the employee.email from this collection. But yeah, employee, yeah. I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh yeah, great, Valerie. Thank you. Before I try and troubleshoot this, let me see if anybody else had any last questions. Oh, I don't know what's going on. It's hard to do this without... Joelle's usually so helpful. So Lise said, don't you have to give them access to data in order to use the app? You can give them... You don't have to give them access to the site. So you can just not share the site with them, not make them a member of the site at all, and only give them, like, split off the list so that they don't inherit permissions from the site, and then only give them contribute permission directly on each list in that site. So that way they can't navigate to the site, and it's not going to show as like a site that they're a member of. Does that help? Cool. Oh, I forgot the Oh, thank you. Okay. I figured it was something that was just being dumb because the syntax of the filter part looked correct. Collect subordinate tasks manual. There. Thank you, Ricky. All right. It's still got the delegation error, but that makes sense. Okay, so then I'll go click this button. And let's go look. So now here are all my subordinates tasks in a collection from that manual list that I did. Another thing that I could do is and I don't have time for it right now, but if I want to get rid of that problem, that delegation problem, is that when I do this first collection, I could do what's called an add column function, and I could do the add column function as I'm doing the collection, and I can make it so that it adds that employee.email as a separate column in the collection. That way, when I'm referring to employee email, I could just have like one field called employee email, and it wouldn't give me delegation issues. I just don't have time to do that. All right, let me switch back over to my other little scene here. That was a fun nitty-gritty technical one, right? I kind of breezed through just the SharePoint stuff towards the beginning, and but we got pretty deep with the Power Apps formulas. So hopefully that helped anyone who was trying to achieve those concepts in your Power Apps and help you understand what the challenges are with it not really being possible in SharePoint, and how it would help to just do it in the Power App, and as a kind of a workaround, as that SharePoint just doesn't do it out of the box. So I'll see you all next time, and thanks for coming. Thanks for watching, and check out iwmentor.com for all of my SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, Teams training. And check out the schedule button at the top of that page of that website to see when the next Power Hours and when the training's coming up.